Are the Florida Gators the sexy pick to win the national championship? One expert says so. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers who are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network covering your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Nissan Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. All right, we got to dive right into it as we are fully into March Madness conversation. We already talked about it earlier this week. 14 SEC teams into the NCAA tournament, a record. I get it. Some people saying Texas, they made the play-in. That's not the real tournament. It's 68 teams now. Deal with it. We're probably going to go more than this in the next couple of years. There's talk of 70 plus, maybe 80 plus, whatever. But regardless, it still is an incredible feat, an incredible record, and we'll see what Texas does tonight with Xavier as they get ready for that play-in game. But Reid Gettys is a guy that I've heard on the calls throughout this year, does some work for ESPN, is a former college basketball player himself, played with the Houston Cougars, and but has studied and watched a lot of the SEC teams this year, like the Florida Gators, like Texas A&M, like Auburn, and our buddy Matt Thomas over on KBME in Houston, he caught up with Reid Gettys earlier today and got Reid's thoughts on the NCAA tournament. And, you know, he talked about the Houston Cougars a little bit, but particularly he hit on some of the SEC teams. So I figured we'd let you guys hear, kind of the thought that he started with was, who's the danger to, most danger to Houston on their side of the bracket. And, Reid seems to think that it is it's the Tennessee Volunteers. And so that's what's very interesting when you look at that Midwest bracket where, yes, Houston is the 1 seed there and they've had an incredible year, but it's that 2 seed all the way down at the bottom, Tennessee. We know they're going to, feel pretty good about them taking care of business against Wofford, with the group that they have this year, the defense that they play. They're going to get the winner of the UCLA, Utah State bracket winner out of that one. And again, you feel pretty good about Tennessee in that. Of course, Kentucky still could come out of that other side of the bracket there. They're going to play Troy, and then if they win that one, get the winner of Illinois or possibly Texas Xavier. It'd be really funny if Texas could knock off Xavier and then Rodney Terry beats Illinois, and then you get possibly a Mark Pope versus Rodney Terry, Texas versus Kentucky matchup in round 2. Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but I feel pretty good about Tennessee coming out of that bottom half of the bracket. I think Kentucky and Mark Pope will be, future years down the road. We'll let you hear a little bit later in this episode, Lance Daw giving his thoughts on the matchup with Kentucky and Troy. But, it still feels like Tennessee is the most likely candidate to come, SEC team to come out of this bracket and really give Houston some headaches. And so without further ado, here was, like we said, Reid Gettys, former college guard, calling games for ESPN, and you'll be may not be surprised to hear who he's got in the national championship at the end of this segment. So here was Reid Gettys on with our buddy Matt Thomas.
Dude, every game's tough. I mean, every single game's tough. I look at it with my heart, and man, my eyes immediately go down to that number 2 line in Tennessee. Tennessee, very similar. Rick's team, very similar to the Cougars. They are the best offensively. I've seen Rick's teams and his offenses continued to evolve. I was critical when his late years in Texas, they were good defensively, but they just got so predictable and not very creative on the offensive end. Man, his offensive sets now are so good, and he's got constant motion and pin downs and guys curling and flaring, and that Tennessee team is really, really good. And, you get to the Elite Eight, it's a crapshoot anyway, but that's the one that jumps out at me.
All right. First of all, surprise level that Texas got in to begin with.
Yeah, no doubt. I think they can beat Illinois. Illinois has been very, really hot, really cold. Texas has as much talent and they can win that game. If you're a Texas fan, there's so much rumbling about Rodney Terry. Do you want him to? Do you want him to get into the second weekend? I keep having that debate with UT fans, but let me tell you something. They've got enough talent to go to, if you haven't watched Trey Johnson play, SEC player, newcomer of the year,
yeah,
that kid can ball. I mean, he is so good. And I love the Kendall Weaver kid for toughness and the point guard, and they've got bigs. They could go win a couple games. But you're talking about Texas. Hey, Matt, I've got 3 Texas teams in the Elite Eight. I've actually got A&M beating Michigan and Auburn. Look, there are a lot of people. The trendy, if you're looking for, across the experts and pundits, and you're looking for a 4-13, a lot of people are picking Yale. You and I saw A&M early in the year.
Yeah,
that team is good. I'm telling you, Wade Taylor's as good as any basketball player in the NCAA tournament, not named Cooper Flagg. And then you add in their bigs, they've got 5 guys that average over 5 rebounds a game. I mean, they will beat your brains in on the board. Look, 5 guys, compare that to U of H. U of H's got 2 guys that average over 5 rebounds a game. I'm telling you, A&M is tough. And I don't like A&M as much as I like Texas Tech. Texas Tech is legit. That's a team that could make a run. I've got them playing Florida in the Elite Eight, and man, I stared at that a long time and finally went with Florida. But what Grant McCaslin's done in Lubbock is they got a really good team.
They do. Reid, back to A&M for a second. Couple things that bother me about them, and you and I did see them early in the year, and I've watched them quite a bit over the course of the year. They are very prone to scoring droughts, especially when the ball is not in Wade Taylor's hands. That's concern number 1. And number 2, and I don't mean to dumb this down because you can say this about any school in the country, their free throw percentage is atrocious. And they should have beaten Texas in that SEC tournament game in Nashville. They don't hit free throws on the regular to begin with, but their clutch free throw percentage is terrible too. And that, when it gets to the tournament and you got 20,000 people in a building or you're playing in a dome, nerves are going to come into play. And that's where I need the mentally strong guys hitting my 15-foot charity stripe free throws.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when you struggle at the free throw line, boy, you talk about that being put on steroids in the NCAA tournament. I agree with all that, Matt. But here's the deal. Maybe they're too dependent on Wade Taylor, but I do know I watched Wade Taylor put 41 on Jamal Shedd. And it was like, holy crap, this kid, golly. He is, I'm a huge Wade Taylor fan, but they're really, really good defensively. But, man, they can withstand those cold spurts because they just go get everything that comes off the glass. I mean, they literally just go get everything. They've got wide bodies. They've got strong kids. They've got, athleticism. I do not see Yale pulling that upset, and I think A&M's off and running.
Maybe Auburn for the championship? What do you think?
I got them playing Florida. I got A&M beating Auburn for the second time this year. And then I haven't watched Michigan State. Everyone keeps telling me how good they are.
Yeah, St. John's kind of that same thing. Yep.
Yeah, but I've got Florida and U of H in the finals.
So there's Reid Gettys picking Florida and Houston to make his final. But what do you think about what he had to say there in being so high on A&M? When we first threw it out there, taking a look at the South region, I thought, there's a lot of people picking Yale to upset Texas A&M. When we threw out the stat the other day, Yale is like top 20 in the country in 3-point percentage shooting, and I think A&M was ranked 323rd. Those are numbers that matter come tournament time. If Yale comes out and they're on a heater and just knocking down 3 after 3 after 3, A&M, as much as I like Henry Coleman and Wade Taylor and their senior leadership, man, they are becoming the hot team to be upset. I think FanDuel's got A&M, or they had them as of earlier today, as a 7.5-point favorite man, it's good value if you think Yale's going to pull off the upset. And of course, filling out your bracket, you want to jump all over Yale if you think they're going to pull off that upset. But he's got Texas A&M not just beating Yale, he's got them beating Michigan in the second round and then beating Auburn in the Sweet 16. I mean, what a run for Buzz Williams if he's able to pull that off. And again, this Auburn team, I still think, yes, they've lost 3 out of the last 4. Who's gonna slow down Janai Broome? Or is it, do you just let Janai go off and you worry about everybody else? So just found that very interesting from Reid Gettys and his kind of pick. And then, of course, what's becoming the sexiest pick is the Florida Gators. And we kind of talked about, them a little bit earlier in the week, but sitting there as as a number 1 seed, 30-4 record, win the SEC tournament, obviously, went through a gauntlet to get there to win it. And I understand why a lot of people are picking them, but doesn't it also feel like that's kind of like flavor of the week, right? Like you're hopping on the bandwagon because they just showed how hot they were and ran through the SEC tournament. Just because you did that, though, doesn't mean it's going to have carryover. You're going to carry it into the NCAA tournament. So, but I get it. This Florida team is legit. They're loaded. They defend. They could score with the best of them. And yeah, I think they'll take care of Norfolk State in the first round. That UConn Oklahoma game, the more I start to look at Porter Moser, I don't know, man. I don't think this Oklahoma team can win in the first round. I think UConn, as topsy-turvy as their year was, they're still the back-to-back reigning national champs, and they still got a hell of a coach. But I just wonder if they don't have do they not have the big dogs to run with Florida in the second round? Or is that an upset brewing? Is everybody going, why is UConn an 8 seed? They're better than that, even though they got the 10 losses on the season. So I almost have it as a lock. I think UConn beats Oklahoma in the first round. But what kind of trouble did they give Florida in round 2? And then, of course, after that, Sweet 16 potential matchup, if Florida is able to get there, potential matchup against a good Memphis team, against a good Maryland team. And then, of course, the other side of the bracket, you got St. John's as a 2. You've got, Missouri's in there as a 6. Some people still think they won't get past Drake. Of course, the wild card with Arkansas. What is John Calipari and company going to do? In their first round matchup against Kansas, can they pull that off? So plenty to discuss still as you guys kind of continue to fill out your brackets and get everything set. And coming up next, we'll let you hear a little bit of our buddy John Neighbors' little crossover talk on Locked On Razorbacks, giving you his thoughts on Arkansas's first round matchup against Kansas and the path ahead for them. More Locked On SEC coming to you right after this. All right, guys, the Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. And each week, our Locked On college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets. These guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. And this week's Armada and clear-cut Team of the Week is the Florida Gators. The Gators, led by Walter Clayton, 17 points per game, just dominated the SEC tournament, winning each game by at least 9 points. Not only did Florida grab the 4th 1 seed, but they are the nation's most efficient offense. And when it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what the Florida Gators have done here. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder. Go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. And today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life it makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, you want to make sure your family is financially protected no matter what happens, and Fabric is going to give you that peace of mind. Go join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric, FABRIC.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Fabric by Gerber Life. Check them out today at fabric.com/lockedoncollege. All right, diving back into it here on Locked On SEC, and a lot of our Locked On guys doing great jobs breaking everything down. And our guy John Neighbors over at Locked On Razorbacks giving us a little primer, breaking down the matchup against Kansas and the path ahead for John Calipari and company. Of course, the news that Boogie Fland expected to be back, Duthiero not, but it'll be a very interesting matchup for the Arkansas Razorbacks and, of course, Bill Self. I've talked about this earlier in the week. So many teams in this tournament underachieving this year, where you got a UConn sitting as an 8 seed and you got a Kansas sitting as a 7 seed. You know, these are all teams we're used to seeing up there as 1s and 2s and 3s, but still means they are super dangerous. So without further ado, here was our buddy John Neighbors, Locked On Razorbacks, making a case for the Razorbacks in this NCAA tournament.
Both teams have been disappointing, to say the least. Both teams were highly ranked at the beginning of the year, and both teams have not had the seasons that either team has wanted. And that's what makes this so fascinating, is because there's a lot of similarities between the two teams. They played each other in that exhibition game in Bud Walton Arena to start the season months ago, and it didn't matter. Arkansas won that game, but it's an exhibition. Some of the key players didn't play for either team. Completely different places right now, but still, there's at least some familiarity. There's some respect there. And I think with both Bill Self and John Calipari, they've faced off against each other quite a few times. So the familiarity and the style and philosophy and everything is definitely there. Kansas went 11-9 in the Big 12. 11-9. They most recently lost to Arizona when they played them twice once in the Big 12 tournament, but the other time in the regular season, which they won that game. They lost to Houston on the road by 6. They lost to Texas Tech, who's a really good team, by 5 before that. But then you started seeing weird stuff, like them getting beat by BYU by 30-plus points. That was weird. I remember that game. It was very strange. Seeing them lose to Kansas State the way they did was strange. Seeing how, I think it was which other game that they ended up losing earlier in the year. I feel like there was another one in there. I know they lost to Missouri and Creighton, but this point is that like the teams that they lost to for the most part in the Big 12 were really good teams. It wasn't like they had just a ton of bad losses. They lost to Utah also, which wasn't great, but you know they had losses to Houston. They lost to them twice. They lost to Iowa State, got beat pretty handedly by them. They lost to Baylor, lost to West Virginia, which West Virginia did not get into the tournament. It was wild. Just random side note. Saw that in almost everybody's projections, that everybody who does projections had West Virginia in them. Every single one of them had them in the tournament, and they didn't get in. North Carolina did, which is a travesty. But still, that's your matchup for the Razorbacks. You got a little intrigue for many reasons. We'll talk about one of the biggest one here in just a second in the next segment. But for Arkansas, this is just about, hey, you got in. You did your job. You got into the NCAA tournament. Personally, I wasn't too thrilled in the fact that they're going to Providence. I am going to be there. All of us at Inside Arkansas are going to be there in Providence. We fly out actually Tuesday morning. So prayers up, and don't worry, I will make sure that I carry on all my equipment. But we'll be there, and we're going to cover it. And we're going to be there hopefully for the entirety of the week and discussing it, covering it, all that good stuff. That's the hope again. So we'll have and I'll be, of course, doing Locked On from there live as well. But that was really disappointing that it had to be Providence. Of all the places to go, that was not the one that I really wanted to be at. And it's nothing against Defiance City. It's just with all the other options and how much more expensive it is up there. You know, there's other places we were going to drive to. If it was Wichita or Milwaukee or even Lexington again, we were going to end up driving and making that happen. But obviously that's not the case. So I was a little disappointed in the location, and also what really sucks eggs is the fact that if Arkansas found a way, somehow, some way, to advance to the Sweet 16, it'd be a long shot, but if they decided to play their best basketball and take care of business, then they would have the Sweet 16 game where? In San Francisco again. So it's almost completely and totally perfect for what it was a few years ago in Arkansas to play in Buffalo, and then they had to go to San Francisco. Granted, they went to the Elite Eight, and it was great. But man, it's a lot. It's a lot to travel that way. It's a lot to make that haul. And so I feel for Razorback fans mainly because that's not easy. Like Providence is not an easy place to get to, plain and simple. But they're gonna get there. They're gonna have some players that hopefully are healthier now.
All right, that again, John Neighbors of Locked On Razorbacks. And of course, when you look down in the West, you've got Arkansas sitting there as the 10 seed, and certainly, a tough matchup in round 1 against Kansas. I think everybody, though, wants to see that Arkansas upset. Maybe not Kentucky fans. Maybe they're rooting against Arkansas, but don't you want to see Calipari versus, versus St. John's in the second round? I think it would be incredible to see Rick Pitino come out and, have to face John Calipari because, look, if you guys don't know, like, they hate each other. Calipari and Pitino just hate each other. There's a reason why it took Calipari leaving to suddenly Rick Pitino comes back to Lexington and, I love the Wildcats. I love Kentucky. I mean, like, he hadn't been back since. And, the guy coached at Louisville, like they're cross-state rival. So pretty impressive showing of what he's been able to do at St. John's. I mean, look, Rick Pitino can coach, man. He's a hell of a coach. And for him to get St. John's in as a 2 seed is incredible. But, Arkansas Razorback fans, I think, would love to see, year 1 didn't go as well as maybe you hoped it would have under John Calipari. Obviously, Eric Musselman had some really nice runs there the last 5 years at Arkansas. He's now at USC. But you got John Calipari. You got the big name coach you wanted. Why not, man? You got the talent on this roster to make a run. We'll be interested to see if the Hawks can do it. But, again, a tough first round game and tough matchup for them. All right, more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. But first, I want to remind you guys about Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You can find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Of course, posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from, instead of hiring full-time, Upwork will help you find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now. Post your job for free. That is Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, continue on here. Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We talked a little bit about the Hogs and Arkansas, John Neighbors. How about everybody, Lance Daw, talking all things Kentucky Wildcats. They have an interesting first-round game against Troy, and a lot of thought here on Kentucky and how far they can go in this tournament. Of course, Mark Pope, the pressure's on him. I heard him say, he did an interview on Sunday evening and said, he said, what an accomplishment. You rallied the troops in year 1 and got this roster together and, we're able to make a run and get a 3 seed in the tournament. And, Mark Pope kind of said, look, the expectations of Kentucky are not just making the tournament. It's about making a run and winning games in the NCAA tournament. So certainly Kentucky hopes to beat Troy at minimum, and we'll see. I think they get a favorable draw here. We'll see what happens with Texas Xavier tonight. The winner of that team will get Illinois. And then, if Xavier wins it or Illinois wins it, I think Kentucky has a chance to beat that team and possibly get to a Sweet 16. That would be a hell of a welcome first year in Lexington for Mark Pope. So we'll certainly see what happens there. But without further ado, here was our buddy Lance Daw over at Locked On Kentucky talking a little bit about the draw for the Wildcats.
But man, this is a very interesting spot for Kentucky to be in. As a 3 seed, other 3 seeds, you can look at Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Wisconsin. I think this all checks out here for the Cats. The Midwest region was a little bit surprising, but the Cats going to be playing in Milwaukee to tip things off, I should say. And the matchup, a team that we had been monitoring. If you actually want to go back about 3 weeks ago, we did an episode breaking down what Kentucky's hypothetical matchups would look like if they finished the regular season, a 3-3 or what have you, with different possibilities in the SEC tournament as well. The Troy Trojans, they were a common opponent back then, and they are going to be the matchup for the Wildcats in the first round. If I'm not mistaken, the books have opened this up. FanDuel has Kentucky as like a double-digit favorite, 10.5, something like that. Ken Palm projects Kentucky to win this game by 12, 82-70. Of course, we'll talk about the Troy Trojans later on this week. I'm actually going to try and get Locked On Sunbelt hosts on to kind of break this one down here as well. I think that would be great to kind of get their insight on the NCAA tournament and then Troy, the Trojans, and kind of how they've fared this season. Because looking on paper, they are very similar to a team that we have already faced this season and beaten, the Texas A&M Aggies. It's very, very, very similar to Troy, and it's actually interesting. Brandon Ramsey of KSR tweeted out saying that if he had to compare this matchup, this team, to another team, it would be like a light version of Texas A&M. A&M lost to the Wildcats this season, 81-69. If you go to Hasla and you see what the line would be for Kentucky in this game, the projection is 81-68. That is the projection on Hasla, obviously 82-70 on Ken Palm. So this is very similar to what we have already seen, I think, this season in a much more, I would say, talented team. Of course, you want to give Troy all the credit. They were the 3 seed in their Sun Belt Conference. They made it to the title game. They clutched things out. I can't remember if they were the ones to take out South Al, who was the top seed in that a conference tournament. I don't remember if it was them or Arkansas State, but nevertheless, the Troy Trojans, physical, create turnovers. They are very erratic and inefficient on offense, but they have the guys to absolutely spring an upset here. But I think you can look at this on paper and understand pretty quickly why Kentucky would be favored, even if they are shorthanded. Obviously, there have been several upsets in the past few years for the Cats, St. Peter's, Oakland. You don't want to go into any matchup, kind of dogging your opponent. So respect and credit to Troy. They're a team that deserves to be in the field and could absolutely punch Kentucky out if things go their way, which I think that's absolutely on the table.
All right, thanks again to Lance Daw, and thanks to all you guys for checking out Locked On SEC today. And thanks to Reid Gettys, joining our buddy Matt Thomas, and appreciate them letting us bring you some of that conversation. Florida Gators, that is the big pick that everybody is jumping in on and thinks that they can make a run. Do you think the Florida Gators have what it takes to make a run to the championship? Let us know in our YouTube comments. And remember to subscribe and check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here, so be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Come on back and see us.